Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we are talking about the future offseason of the Dallas Cowboys because yesterday the Dallas Cowboys got absolutely gobsmacked by the Green Bay Packers, losing 48-32. The game wasn't even close. The Packers got out to a 27-0 lead. The team just looked sloppy overall. Dak Prescott was missing receivers. He threw a pick six in the first half. The defense couldn't get any pressure on Jordan Love. The Packers just marched up and down the field all day long against the Cowboys, and it was an utter beatdown. The Packers became the first 7th seed to ever win a wild card game in NFL history. Now, again, they've only been having a 7th seed like the last 3 or 4 years, I believe. So that gives a little bit of a context. That's still pretty notable. And basically, the big conversation that everyone is having today is what should the Cowboys do? What should the Cowboys do to reverse their fortunes? Because they get these good regular seasons and then they get to the playoffs and then they disappoint. And the question is, it's like, okay, is it something with the personnel? Is it something with the head coach? And a lot of people are pointing the finger at Mike McCarthy and saying they should fire him. They should move on from him, get rid of him. He's a loser, yada, yada, yada. And Dak Prescott, oddly enough, because we know that he is more than likely safe with the Dallas Cowboys in his position, had this interesting quote talking about Mike McCarthy and basically kind of defending his head coach. We'll go ahead, play this clip here. It's about 40 seconds. I do have it on 1.25 seed, so it's probably going to finish around 30 seconds. We'll play this clip, and then we'll kind of discuss what that means for the Cowboys, and we'll kind of discuss the future and what they will end up doing.
There's going to be speculation about your coach and his status. Your thoughts about Mike and everything he's done this year?
Yeah, he's been amazing. I don't know how there can be, but I understand the business. In that case, it should be about me as well, honestly. I mean, that guy, I've had the season that I've had because of him. This team's had the success that they've had because of him. And I understand it's about winning the Super Bowl, and that's the standard of the league and damn sure the standard of this place. So I get it, but add me to the list in that case.
So there you have it, guys. Dak Prescott says, if you put Mike McCarthy on the hot seat, you put me on the hot seat. So basically defending his coach, basically saying, I want us to run it back next year, if you can kind of read in between the lines of what he's saying there. Now, as far as, because a lot of people have been saying this too, and they've been saying, oh, the Cowboys have to move on from Dak, which is ridiculous. I think most of the people that are saying that are saying that because they want to get headlines. Because obviously, if you look at the financial stuff, the value that they get for Dak, and who they would actually get to replace Dak, it's a lot of question marks, and it's a lot of like, hey, if you're moving on from Dak, huge cap hit, and to replace him, more than likely you're not going to get somebody that is going to be an upgrade from Dak Prescott, at least for next year. And say what you want about this roster, say what you want about this team or specific players on it. This team is talented enough to compete for a Super Bowl. I just think that's the case. They have CeeDee Lamb, who was an offensive player of the year candidate. They have a terrific offensive line. I do think maybe they could upgrade the running back position, because I think a lot of people were thinking Tony Pollard was going to be this fantasy football superstar this year. He kind of disappointed on that front. Not to say that he's bad, but if you get like an elite kind of running back at that position, maybe you draft somebody, get lucky there. I think that would be kind of interesting. I don't know who that guy would be, though, this draft. There's not like a Bijan Robinson in the draft. I do think that's one way they could upgrade, but I do think you can win a Super Bowl with Dak, but I don't necessarily think you can do it maybe with this combo here. And kind of to talk about the future of Mike McCarthy, because normally I would say, like, look at him in the last few years. They're winning 12 games a year. They're just disappointing in the playoffs. Maybe they can get over the hump next year. Maybe they do a few personnel changes. They can get over the hump. Normally, I would say that they should stay with Mike McCarthy. But before I kind of get into what the Cowboys will do and, what they should do, I kind of want to just preface all of this stuff, because a lot of times when we talk about the Cowboys, we talk about Jerry Jones, and we talk about how Jerry Jones runs the team. And I think a lot of times when we do this stuff, we don't necessarily give the context of Jerry Jones as an owner. We know that basically since they got rid of Jimmy Johnson, that the team has kind of been perennially underachieving in the playoffs. And I kind of want to go into basically Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones relationship, Jerry Jones' entire tenure of the Cowboys. If you see behind me, there's a book behind me. It's a book about the Cowboys, and it's about when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys in like the late 80s, when he fired Tom Landry, hired Jimmy Johnson, and basically kind of the story of that 90s run for the Cowboys. So I'm going to kind of like preface all of this stuff talking about that story, kind of do maybe a 2-3 minute summation of that. And then we'll kind of talk about what that experience, made Jerry Jones and how he has been running the Cowboys basically since then. So Jerry Jones buys the Cowboys late 80s. The owner is getting ready to sell the team, obviously. The owner is selling the team. The owner is like, hey, I want to fire Tom Landry, but I don't want to do it, and I'm already selling the team. So if you buy the team, I want you to fire Tom Landry. Jerry Jones is like, okay, I'll buy the team. Fires Tom Landry. If you don't know who Tom Landry is, he's the winningest coach in Dallas Cowboys history. He was the coach for like over 2 decades. He brought them their first championship. Basically like a legend. And everyone hated Jerry Jones. All the Cowboys fans hated Jerry Jones after that because they were like, how could you fire this legend? Well, the thing was, Jerry Jones is right in that decision because he hires Jimmy Johnson. They pull off the Herschel Walker trade. And then basically the Herschel Walker trade, they turned that Herschel Walker, because they traded back a bunch of their picks too. They turned Herschel Walker into like multiple Hall of Famers, like Emmitt Smith. I can't talk right now. Emmitt Smith, Darren Woodson, I know are 2 Hall of Famers that came from that trade. And I believe overall it was like 17 players. So it was this masterful trade. Jimmy Johnson basically builds this like juggernaut for a few years. They go and win 2 Super Bowls. But Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones, they did have this Arkansas connection, yes, but they did not necessarily like each other. They had a rough working relationship together. And here's basically why. A lot of owners, when they buy teams, they want to be in charge. And that's why a lot of times when you see, teams, get sold, the owner jumps in and they start making a bunch of like crazy decisions because they think they know best and I think they know how to run a football team. And that's why when owners typically buy a team, you see a little bit of a rough patch to start. We see that right now with the Carolina Panthers and David Tepper, with kind of how bad that stuff has been going there. Jerry Jones was like, hey, I'll let Jimmy Johnson kind of run this thing. And he did. But then after a while, Jerry Jones was like, hey, I want to be, involved in this stuff. And I want to, like, Jerry Jones is very much like a kid that was very much attracted to like shiny objects, where Jerry Jones very much wanted to be a guy that's like, I make the draft pick, I write it down on the card, and then I hand it in. And a lot of times, over and over and over again, Jimmy Johnson, whether it be like in a draft war room, whether it be in front of other employees, Jimmy Johnson would kind of like bulldoze Jerry, overrule him, and a lot of times, honestly, bully him and be mean to him. Not to say that like that is defensible actions, but Jimmy Johnson did that. And Jimmy Johnson, for his point, maybe he didn't get it across in the best way, but he was right in those decisions because he did build a team that ended up winning 3 Super Bowls, 2 with him as the head coach. And after a while, and this is where the Dallas Cowboys story about firing Jimmy Johnson is crazy. They're back-to-back Super Bowl champions. It's like a month after the Super Bowl. There's some sort of NFL team owner meetings that are happening. I can't remember the location. It might have been Miami, I want to say, but they're basically all at this hotel. They have this conference, and Jimmy Johnson at this point, a lot of his assistant coaches had went and gotten like hired as head coaches other places. And basically all of them were kind of at this table, like talking shop, catching up on all this stuff. And Jerry Jones comes over and he kind of wants to say like, hey, what's up guys? And like, wants to like, basically be like, hey, how's it going? Remember the good old times? And Jimmy Johnson basically kind of blows him off, humiliates him again in front of other like NFL head coaches. And basically at that point, the story basically goes, Jerry Jones goes and gets like drunk. And then like at like 3 or 4 a.m. in like a hotel bar, he tells a reporter, I'm firing Jimmy Johnson. And then he sticks to his guns the next day, fires Jimmy Johnson. And I think Jerry, based off that experience with Jimmy, was very scarred from that. And that's kind of why. Now, I don't necessarily remember all of the other, kind of coaches that came between Jimmy and let's say Jason Garrett. But I remember pretty well the Jason Garrett years and now the Mike McCarthy years. And I think because of how badly the Jimmy Johnson thing went, Jerry has been trying to hire head coaches, at least these last 2 hires, that he gets along with and likes, and he has a good working relationship with, which with that being said, I do think you need to have a semi-good working relationship with somebody. I think that's healthy, and I think that's the way things work. I think that's a good thing to go about things. With that being said, though, did Bob Kraft and Bill Belichick necessarily have the best working relationship all the time? No, but they still won 6 Super Bowls from it. So I don't know how important that is. But, there was like the story, like Jason Garrett probably stayed at the Cowboys job for like 6 years longer than he should have because Jerry Jones loved him so much. And that, if you remember when Mike McCarthy got hired, Jerry Jones and him had like the sleepover, and, like Jerry Jones very much likes Mike McCarthy. So that's part of the reason why when we're talking about this stuff, when we're talking about the future of the Cowboys, when we see this a lot more like with college, where it's like why some coaches might not, why some of the Big 12 coaches, for example, like Campbell, Leipold, Kleiman, weren't necessarily interested in the Washington job, is because they want to win and they want to do it their own way. Now, college is obviously different than the NFL. And I think Jerry Jones, with these last few hires with their head coaches, he's wanted to win his own way. And getting to the point here, if you're talking about what the Cowboys should do, now this is my opinion. I think you should just fire Mike McCarthy. Normally, I would say, look at the last few years. You're not going to upgrade from Mike McCarthy in the offseason if you fire him, because I think sometimes we fans very much want somebody's head in a firing process, but I don't think they necessarily think like, hey, if we fire this guy, are we actually going to upgrade in the offseason? Normally, you don't upgrade from Mike McCarthy. With that being said, this offseason is completely unique in that fact. We have Bill Belichick that's on the market. We have Mike Vrabel that's on the market. Jim Harbaugh is interviewing for the Chargers, I believe, today. Would Jim Harbaugh pick the Cowboys over the Chargers if he wants to win a Super Bowl? I think the Cowboys are more ready to win a Super Bowl right now than the Chargers are. Bill Belichick, he wants to break Don Shula's record. If the Cowboys job becomes available, the Cowboys all of a sudden should be, if you're just looking at the roster, they should be the number one target for, they should be the most sought after job for aspiring head coaches. So normally I would say, hey, keep Mike McCarthy. But if you're talking about this time, I do think fire Mike McCarthy, try and get one of these other guys, because I think one of them will say yes. Maybe not all three of them would potentially say yes, and you have your pick of them, but I think one of them will say yes, because I think the biggest thing with the Cowboys is I think they need a culture change. I think they need toughness, because the Packers bullied them. The Packers absolutely bullied them. They Jordan Love had no, pressure in the pocket. He basically got to sit back there all day. He had a clean jersey, even though they played on artificial turf, so his jersey wouldn't get, any green on it anyway. I think they need a little bit of a culture change and some toughness, not necessarily like a culture like overhaul, but I think they just need some toughness, installed into that team. And I think whether it be Vrabel, Harbaugh, Belichick, I think all three of those guys would be able to establish that toughness. Now, basically, the reason I said all of that Jerry Jones, Jimmy Johnson stuff is Jerry Jones going to make the decision to fire Mike McCarthy, because I still think he likes him. He did have quotes where he was kind of like, he didn't necessarily commit to Mike McCarthy, but he also didn't denounce him. So he kind of was on the fence about it. At least he basically was pretty mum in his press conference that he gave after the game. So who knows? We're recording this around Monday at 1:00 Central Time. So who knows by the time this is posted in the next few hours if Mike McCarthy is going to be axed, if he's going to stay. But the question is going to be with the Cowboys, is Jerry Jones going to say, because basically Jerry Jones hasn't had much say over the roster. He's let other people handle that. But Jerry Jones has been very involved in picking the head coach. And if Jerry Jones still has a good working relationship with Mike McCarthy, sees that they're still winning games, I feel like Mike McCarthy's going to stay. I feel like he's going to stay. And again, getting kind of to the bigger point here, is there a chance? I do think if they fire Mike McCarthy, hiring one of these other guys, they have a better chance to win a Super Bowl. But how important is winning a Super Bowl to Jerry? Is it more important to him just win one? It doesn't matter how. Or does Jerry want to do it with his guy and his way? And that's basically the overarching question of the Cowboys. And we're going to find out in the next week or so, maybe the next few days or so, maybe the next few hours or so, what the Cowboys think here, what they're going to do. Are they going to stick with Mike McCarthy? Are they going to fire him? Let me know in the comments what they should do with Dak, with McCarthy. um, what you think Jerry Jones will do. Thank you guys for listening. If you got all the way to this part, this is going to be the end of the video right now. If you got this far, if you like this video, if you like this content, like stories like this, please hit that subscribe button, like this video if you would be so kind. My name is James Williams. As I mentioned at the top, been doing this podcast, YouTube show now for a few years now. We're just now starting to put clips like this on YouTube. For a while, it was just like audio. I talk NFL, college football, NBA, college basketball, all kinds of fun stories like that. So if you like this content, please hit subscribe. Maybe, explore the YouTube channel a little bit more, and maybe find another video that you like and want to watch. So thank you very much for watching. I'll probably post a few more videos today too, so check those out too. As always, guys, I'll talk to you next time.